I'm thrilled to be here with all of you today to talk about the wonderful community that is Santa Monica, with these terrific men who represent the past and the present and hopefully the future of Santa Monica restaurants. Michael McCarty is our surprise guest that we were able to convince to participate at the last minute. So I'd like to welcome Michael of Michael's.
Thank you, Evan.
You're welcome. And then we have Chad Robertson of the famed Tartine enterprise, who has come down to LA and has the most recent of his bakeries is the Santa Monica location. And then I'd like to say hi to Raphael Lunetta of Lunetta. It's wonderful to have all of you. So Michael, before we start, see, I already just wanted to start talking, but before we start, I wanted to say a couple things. I am a native Angelina, as many of you know, and I grew up on the eastern part of town. I grew up in Silver Lake in the 50s and 60s. So I only knew Santa Monica as a community for the beach. I would take 2 or 3 buses when I was like 9 or 10 years old with a girlfriend. We would go to the beach, stay there all day long, maybe go to Pacific Ocean Park, which was still there. And our eating was basically at the pier or at the IHOP, which was right near the pier. And it wasn't until the 80s that I discovered Santa Monica through West Beach Cafe, Rebecca's, 72 Market Street, and of course, Michael's. We have a wonderful little slideshow of some history of Santa Monica restaurants. So why don't we just take a look at that now to give us some context.
Very good.
Guys, feel free to chime in if you remember any of these.
The Bellevue was a restaurant where they served you a salad after your main course.
Wow, how sophisticated.
Yes.
Wow.
She was a hoot.
Raphael and Michael, do you remember all these places from when you were younger?
Younger. Well, I know the galley.
Yeah, Galley's still there.
Yeah. Where was the Bellevue?
The Bellevue was where Boa is now, right on the corner of Ocean Avenue, and it's a great restaurant location.
Yeah.
Why didn't we get that one, Michael?
I don't know. Oh boy. JJ.
Wow, institution.
He'd bring his mother in for her birthday every year.
All right, I have a little story about Shay J. I used to ask my mom to bring me there when I was 14, 15 years old for my birthday dinners to have a filet of beef with the bearnaise sauce. It was, it's just, why would a kid at 14 years old want to go to Shay J for the steamed clams, the shrimp scampi, and a filet of beef with bearnaise sauce? It was little sawdust on the floor. It was pretty interesting choice for a young guy to want to go to.
Absolutely. Oh no, that just sounds fantastic.
It was cool. I loved it. I used to see Jay in the corner, and that menu, that first menu is you've got Catalina swordfish on there, you have the Sandevs on there, you have the potatoes with the banana potatoes, the green goddess dressing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Jay was pretty much an interesting, definitely pretty legitimate in the corner there, sitting there, and that menu was well priced back in the day.
Yeah. Martinis. That's great. Oh.
Whoa.
That's a throwback.
That's too much.
Is that
And look
Jonathan
at
Waxman?
You got Waxman on the
Look at that.
right. You've got Rebecca Nacarado, who was married to
Right.
Gordon at the time.
Yep.
Then you have Jimmy Brinkley in the back. He was our first pastry chef. And then you have, you see Philip and Marguerite, Evan,
Yes. Oh my gosh.
in the middle there. And the little girl right there with the t-shirt on. The next door neighbors were the laundromat. The dry cleaners. And the mother beat on me all the time because we had our uniforms clean there. She gave me a deal. And she said, but all right, now I have another favor. You need to teach my 3 daughters to be pastry chefs. And we did, one by one. They came over. Oh my
Amazing.
Look
Yeah.
a good trade.
God, G-Rab.
There you go.
That was a lot of good memory, a lot of great memories in that space.
When did you open? What year was it?
April 11th, 1996.
1996.
April 11th,
You
1996.
and your pal.
My pal and I, Josiah, to open it. He had lunch at Lunetta today. We were talking about, we spent the morning together this morning. But April 11th, 1996. And Michael, Lisa Gardner, who was our pastry chef at Giraffe, who's still our pastry chef at Lunetta, was one of your pastry chefs at Michael's early on.
Oh my
And
God.
one of our servers, Jeffrey, who's currently at Lunetta, was one of your first servers with Gordon.
With Gordon, oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
So that's really interesting how it just, Lisa, Jeffrey, it's pretty special to still have all these people that we all are still, we'll see them at the market.
Yep.
We'll see them when we go out. It's pretty special.
Yeah, it very much so is. Really. There we go.
My favorite.
Yeah. We need Bella standing on the corner.
We need Bella.
Where's Bella? She was at Mark's memorial. Oh, there's the famous Tartine.
Such a great building.
Yeah, it is.
Opened the March of 2020. So literally the week that we got sort of shut down.
We walked right into the buzzsaw.
Exactly.
Wow.
Couldn't have been a better neighborhood to open up in.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah. Well, you have all the hospitals.
it's a good spot.
Yeah, definitely.
You guys must have done a ton of work there.
Yes, ton of work.
I understand it was a funeral home.
Yes, and I really had to place a lot of trust in my partners when they showed me that space a couple of years ago. But they're LA people and they know what they're talking about. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's a historic building. So there are a lot of things that we had to preserve, and I'm honored to be there, and I'm really proud of how it turned out.
Yeah.
And we have people that we have customers that have been there when it was a chapel and a funeral home. And we have customers that have brunch there now and say, it's really nice to have a new life, and so to speak, in this corner.
Yeah.
Also with the building, let's not forget what this panel is all about. It's such an important thing in LA, especially now when, every time I travel, every time I leave and I come back to my neighborhood in Mid-City, something has changed fundamentally in the physical landscape. And it's nice to still have touchstones of history in the built environment. Yep. It's really, really important. I'm wondering if the 3 of you could each just speak a bit to, maybe start with Raphael and Michael. Speak about the neighborhood itself and your relationship to it at the age you were when you first opened. Michael, you were like an infant.
Well, I found that property in 1978. It was a pretty bleak area in those days, like tumbleweeds. The 3rd Street Promenade was virtually empty. We had where the Sur La Table used to be, was a used mattress store, which tells you the sign of the times. And across the street was Europa, which was a linen shop. And then we had J.C. Penney's. And my restaurant started out as the Brigadoon, one of the 3 pubs with the Mucky Duck and the Ye Old King's Head, and albeit in a different location. And across the street from us was another fun fact called the Dog House, which was a German Frankfurter spot where the big black building is now. But it was a very, I mean, I searched far and wide to find a place to put a garden in. And that led me down the path from, I said, it's got to be west of the 405. And I went to various places all along, and then I found this, and it just had a little glow to it coming out of it, the Brigadoon. And it turned out when I walked around the back, there was this huge overgrown jungle. And I said, this is it. So our neighborhood was very interesting. It was extremely quiet. It was pretty much retirement community for a lot of Brits. A lot of fun. Another fact about Santa Monica, a lot of people don't know that, but it's 80% tenants, apartments. And so you had a lot of retirees there. It confirmed it, because I decided I was going to live in Malibu. And when I lived in Malibu, I didn't want to drive in to, you know, the restaurant row on La Cienega. So this was perfect.
And what about you, Raphael?
I had I'll try to make it a little short. I'll try to make it short. We grew up in Santa Monica, both Josiah and myself, and it's an interesting story. I've shared it a few times, but my father was in the restaurant industry, or his parents were in Boston, and Josiah and I met in the 4th, 5th grade, right out here on the beach in Santa Monica. His mother was Huli, could cook food like nobody's business. I mean, she really cooked the kind of food that we love to eat right now, that never goes out of style. It never goes out of, it's just California cuisine with so much balance, with both freshness from always using what was seasonal before we even used that term, with vinegars, with sweetness, natural sweetness. And we would either go back to Josiah's house, or we would go back to my dad's house, where my dad would cook wonderful food. And we met, and we had this crazy vision of one day opening a restaurant together. Cutting the story a little quicker, we worked in different restaurants after returning from France, after high school, graduating, going to elementary school here right up the street on 4th and Hill, junior high school on Ocean Park in 16th, and then graduating from Samuel High. It was always a dream to open something in this community. Worked for a few other people, opened the Broadway Deli with Bruce and Marvin and Michelle Richard. And we were making an omelet. I was making an omelet one day, and I put it up, and Michelle said, "That omelet's terrible, get rid of it." And then I made another omelet the way he wanted it. And then Bruce walked by and said, "That omelet is wrong, get rid of it." And I realized working for other people was going to be challenging. And then I walked up and down. We worked at Patina for a little bit, and I think I hit a kind of a low point where I kind of said, you know, God, how to pursue, how to move forward in this industry. I want to work for myself, but but it was kind of a scary, daunting, ambitious thought. And I walked up 5th Street, and I thought, God, I'm going to open a restaurant on this street. Abiquiu had just opened with John Sudler. And I thought 4th Street was a little bit busy as a thorough way of a street, and the Promenade didn't know what that wanted to be. But we had Michael's, we had Chinois, we had 72 Market Street, we had West Beach Cafe, we had Rebecca's, we had these amazing restaurants on the west side, and somehow that dream kind of came to be 4 or 5 years later. An opportunity came up on the corner of 5th Street, and Josiah and I walked upstairs, met with our landlord, and figured out how to make it happen with, I think we spent initially about $150,000 to open that space, all in, with about 40,000 in the bank for working capital and all of it. So it was a pretty interesting, but the interesting part was it was a neighborhood, and we were just a neighborhood restaurant. I remember Henschie's across the street when back in the day, but it was very much a neighborhood restaurant, like the restaurants that I loved and admired up in the Bay Area, or that we saw small restaurants in Paris or whatever. And that's what we wanted to be. Obviously, it changed, but feel very blessed and fortunate to be able to open a restaurant in a neighborhood where I grew up, where we knew so many people, and we had the examples and the mentors like Michael and like Wolfgang and like Tony Bill and Bruce, all of these people that knew the industry so well and really created what became such relevant cuisine now. It will never go out of style.
You just said neighborhood. It was a neighborhood restaurant, and I've been thinking about the three of you and how the three of you have both had the experience of having neighborhood restaurants. Definitely. I mean, the bakeries are all like neighborhood restaurants, I would imagine, but also destination places. There was a period where I'm sure where people drove across the city to go to Giraffe. And now with Lunetta, it feels very comfy there. I mean, I have to tell you that in the before times when we were working in the new building at the new KCRW building in Santa Monica, that was like my hideout. Like, go there to recharge and just sit and watch people in between interviews. So I'd love if the three of you, and let's start with Chad first, would talk about the difference of what you expect between a destination and a neighborhood place, and how Santa Monica has served this idea of neighborhood. And Chad, maybe you can speak to it because you've come in this strange time when neighborhood sort of takes on a completely different meaning. Yeah. In that we've had to care for each other in a very different way during this period of time.
Yeah, first I'll say I'm just honored to be here speaking with the three of you. I am the new guy on the block. Opened Tartine in San Francisco in 2002 as definitely a neighborhood, cafe, bakery. Came into LA a few years ago, landed downtown, which seemed like a good idea, but we shut all that down right before COVID, and then started focusing on just investing more in neighborhoods like where we started. We started in San Francisco with farmers markets, no retail shop, just selling at farmers markets for years. So, being able to open in Santa Monica, with, as was said in the intro, one of the most beautiful farmers markets in the world is really, amazing for a chef. And again, it was a funeral home, a chapel, and I was very impressed at how it sort of got transformed into this eating place. We opened literally first or second week of March, and after having closed everything downtown, sort of wounded, but moving into Santa Monica, I was mostly on the east side when we were open, and at the Row, lots of people came in and said, "This is amazing. When are you going to open on? Are you going to do anything on the west side?" And I said, "Yeah, we are actually next year." And they said, "Okay, we'll see you next year."
Did you really understand the paradigm of LA geography at that point?
Of course not. No. Now I do a little bit, but I don't claim to understand much, but I understand a little more than I did. But I'll say opening in Santa Monica on that corner the first week when COVID started to come out, and we weren't shut down, but everything, we were all making up the rules. Everybody, including the CDC, was making up the rules at the time. But as Michael said, there's lots of hospitals around there. We had a lot of support from the business community and also just all of our neighbors, people living around. I would say, we also opened in Silver Lake just a little bit after that. And Santa Monica was so supportive, the city and the people, and it's our busiest location. And, you know, through all, you know, the first opening, then the second closure, and, you know, everything, it's just been such a joy and an honor to be there. And, you know, I look at what these guys have done over the years, and I'm just hoping to be able to build something that adds to the community, because it is such an amazing city. Santa Monica, but all of LA, I mean, it's an incredible place coming from the Bay Area. You mentioned earlier a little bit this divide kind of, but I kind of live wherever I am, and I love LA so much. I mean, I think it's amazing.
I think a lot of us, when we first heard you were coming down here, were like, that's interesting, because Tartine seemed to be like the quintessential Northern California craft bakery. You know, there's that little bit of tension between the North and the South, culinarily.
I never really understood that. And I'll say, probably Angelinos will appreciate this. The San Francisco people were the only ones that ever said anything bad about LA. I never heard anything. So I was kind of like, this is the big brother, big sister that's kind of got it all covered. And they're like talking about the other one, you know, because no one in LA has ever said anything to me about San Francisco. So I sort of noted that when I got here, and also I said to you before, like, I don't see how people or why they would compare, you know, like it's going to take a lifetime to get to know LA, even a little bit. And San Francisco is, you know, an amazing place, but it's very small.
Yeah.
Small.
So we have a question from Matt, and he asks, how are things changing now for restaurants in Santa Monica? It seems like the city, downtown in particular, has become more tourist driven and less about serving the community. What do you think, Michael and Raphael, to that?
Well, we've always, in the 42 years that we've been open there.
Okay, let me just take a moment. I think we all have to
years.
bow. I mean, that is insane.
I know. I went like, no, yeah, whatever. At any rate, you know, the pier, the restaurants all located down by the pier were always where the tourists were, because nobody quite made it up to the northern part of the promenade, because we're the last building before it's all residential. So we never really experienced ever in the 42 years any kind of the normal street tourism. That said, you know, we got people sent from the, you know, half a dozen hotels in the area. But our area, especially even with COVID, which, you know, there's a silver lining in many things, as I say, leverage the disaster. We were able to remove the front of our restaurant and open up what was formerly 2 gardens and a bar, and add the sidewalk dining and the parklet dining. And we now have this very much like the Boulevard Saint-Germain, you know, Café Fleur de Magot kind of you walk by, and before it looked like a little speakeasy. And now it's like last night, there were 100 people out there all night long from 5 o'clock until 11. And
That's
so
incredible.
It's a bustling activity. And that's before you even walk in and go to the back garden and the terrace. And those were all people from the neighborhood. You know, our 2 blocks from us, I can't tell you how, every other client that walks in says, oh, I live on Washington and 3rd, or I live on I live on California and 2nd. So it's always anybody who walks, and that's become a huge part of our clientele. And then the driving people, they're from, you know, Pacific Palisades, Brentwood, Santa Monica, and so it's a great combination. But it is really, again, with the hotels, that's our tourism. But really, the local scene is just incredible.
That coming out of what we've come out of, that's just really wonderful to hear. And I mean, the thing I know that I miss the most as I drove around when things were pretty shut down, was just all these third places that aren't your home, that aren't work, but that where there's a churn of people. And now I think people are calling it the human bath. You
Yeah.
need to go take a human bath and just go,
Yeah. Yeah.
go sit where there's people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Raphael?
Yeah, as Michael said, you know, the tourism is been a good part. We opened as a neighborhood restaurant. We're at Giraffe, and we're as a small little restaurant at Giraffe, and we didn't have the name to maybe capture a larger audience at that time, but we did get people that we actually met through that restaurant. We met so many wonderful people that have continued to support, you know, Giraffe for 20 years and continue to support Lunetta. There's a community here in Santa Monica. You know, I can mention his name, but he used to come to Michael's every Wednesday night, and he was the owner of a restaurant just down the way. Tony Bill, Michael, and you know, he comes to the restaurant, and he, you know, and it's Tony Bill, it's Michael Donaldson. I'm putting names out there. He was in last night, and he, you know, he and Tim speak of your restaurant, and they patronize our restaurant.
Yeah. And
we all coexist together, and it's that community and that, you know, that piece of it that continues to, we, you know, when we go to dinners at either of our restaurants, we're gonna frequently see a lot of our guests at other restaurants, and it's a very gratifying emotion and feeling that we get when we see that. So there's an amazing community here. The tourism, as Michael said, comes from the hotels. You know, being on 20th and Pico or 24th and Pico, we're not that draw maybe to the tourism as we used to be, but we weren't when we opened Giraffe either. Maybe with time we'll see a bit more of that. But I think what you've done, Michael, and what you just shared with the front of the restaurant, a few of our crew came in for dinner last week, and they thought it was amazing. So it's, after 42 years, you keep staying inspired and motivated to always continue to push. And I think you know, that's what we all must do. We're changing the front room a little bit on the dining room side, and I'm doing blue Venetian plaster and something to try to create a bit of a different feeling. But it's always about just staying motivated, inspired, and committed to what we're doing, and having some fun with it. I think, you know, enjoying it a little bit through what we've all been through. I mean, Chad, what you went through and what you just shared, coming here and, you know, going downtown and then opening the second week of March. I mean, I hear that, and I know we've all gone through, and it's for you to be sitting here right now and, you know, to stay positive and enthusiastic about it it says a lot. So just have to stick together and make it happen.
Yeah.
Something that I've really felt very strongly, having lived through the 1991 financial cataclysm and the 2008 still in the restaurant business, and then watching this unfold as a person who holds a lot of stories of other people, is how collaborative and transparent people have been willing to be with one another in the business. I've seen a kind of an internet interaction that I never expected. I've had the great luck of being on email chains amongst restaurateurs, and I've just been flabbergasted by the generosity. So like Michael said, you know, silver linings. I know that there is this panel that Laura is going to lead next week, which I'm sure is going to be incredible, on the farmers markets. But we can't talk about Santa Monica and having a restaurant in Santa Monica without at least giving the market its due. It's so fundamental to the identity of the city. Would each of you like to talk a bit about your relationship to the market and the rhythms of it and how it informs what you do?
Absolutely.
Michael, you want to start?
Before I opened the restaurant, a couple of years before, Jean Bertrand, who was the chef owner of L'Ermitage, and I put together a duck farm because we surveyed all over and we figured that most of the meat was fantastic. We had great squab, great quail, great fish, albeit to get away from people delivering frozen fish, because that's all they delivered in those days, was a big deal. But the farmers were the big black hole, because, you know, people talk about farm to table, but in our day there were no farms. And so part of Dennis Weiss at Northern Produce and Jean, myself, and a few others down here was to encourage farmers to develop such a thing as a farmer's market. Because if you remember something, you know, a lot of the produce that we were buying would be bought from a jobber. So in other words, the producer who grew the farmer who grew it would sell it to one person, who would then gather it and sell it to another person. Then they would gather it and sell it to another person. The beauty of the farmer's market is, instead of the farmers getting 25 cents on the dollar, they were getting $1 on the dollar. And that's one of the greatest things, because developing a clientele was extremely important, because you convince all of these farmers to grow all of this stuff, and then you've got to have somewhere to sell it. And so that's why the farmers market are so fantastic. And the clientele has been, I mean, the public, not just the restaurateurs, but the support is just phenomenal. I don't know how many farmers market we have in LA County alone.
Over, I think it's hovering around between 50 and 60 a week.
Yeah, it's got to be astounding. I mean, out here in Malibu, I have Larry Thorne from Thorne Family Farms, is a fantastic local farmer here. In fact, he's probably the only one right here. But he's done a remarkable job. And, you know, that market in Santa Monica is through the roof. It's fantastic.
As you, throughout the years, as you brought on different chefs,
yeah,
before they came to you, had they been used to working off the market, or were you introducing some of them to the market for the first time?
Well, yeah, it depends on the decade, you know. You know, it wasn't there in the 70s. We helped put it together in the 80s. And yes, so each chef that would come, I would do my road show. I'd walk around to introduce them all to the farmers that we bought from. We bought this from this one and this one from that one. And then depending on the chef, there was, you know, much bigger interest, but in the experimenting and talking with the farmers, you know, like Alec and Weiser and Barbara and you know, I just heard a horrible thing that I think it's Bella Flora, that's the last time they're doing the market because they have no water.
Well, they're actually digging a new well, but that's going to take time, and they don't know what the results are going to be, so they're stepping back. But yeah, huge reality check, and they're right there at the foot of the sequoias.
Yes.
So that's very disturbing, very, very disturbing.
But the market itself is really, Laura did a fantastic job of shepherding everybody and getting them organized and the communication. And I mean, I think all the chefs love it. And I knew it was gone a little too far when I saw some of the big produce companies with their giant trucks going through there and hoovering up all the product to take and ship it to wherever it was going to go. But good for them, because the farmers are the ones that need the support, and whatever you could get, however you can get the money to the farmers, that's the best thing on the market right there.
Raphael, when did you start working from the market? From the very beginning?
Yeah, we were at Capri on Abbot Kinney prior to 90, 92, 93. And that's probably the beginning, 92, 93. And then when we shifted to Giraffe in 96, it was a pretty convenient way to find, well, you know, incredible product just blocks away. So it's always been a very special place for us to, you know, get down there and inspire us to look at tasting menus, you know, work the menu around the market, get to know the farmers, connect with other people that were down there. It's been great for us. Yeah, it's been great for everybody. You know,
I was always so jealous of you local guys who I'd see with just a cart trundling along, and I think, well, they don't have to go far.
The best.
It's great. I mean,
fill up that truck of mine and drive across town.
Yeah.
It's really nice though, because I used to bring my kids to the market, you know, on Wednesday morning in the summer, and we'd get them, you know, and it's, you know, as you shared, you said, you know, how many chefs has Michael brought through the farmers market? And for us, you know, Michael's, you know, mentored many chefs through Michael's, and we've had a few, but it's always played a you know, a very important, I mean, it's, you know, more than an important role in our confidence in what we do at the restaurant.
And for you, Chad, I would imagine that was sort of a, if that wasn't there, there wouldn't have been the bakery there, right? I mean, you're so linked, I would imagine that it would be a requirement for you to be near a market.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of chefs from all over LA, you know, East Side and everything's also coming to, even though there are markets, great markets everywhere, you know, Santa Monica's kind of on its own level.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's an easy sell for like our chef at Santa Monica now, David Colander. He's a market guy and he loves it. He's there every, you know, Wednesday, Saturday. It's you know, he's got his favorite farms, and yeah, I mean, we started that way in the Bay Area in the beginning. We didn't have any retail, and it was all just selling at the farmers market and bartering. You know, we never had to buy anything. And then, you know, that sort of relationship over 15, 20 years inspired me to do the same with the grain farmers, which are more Pacific Northwest, because at least for now they have water. They're harvesting everything early now because of the heat wave a few weeks ago. Big problem too, but yeah, I mean, it's always for all of us, I'm sure we agree, it's like getting that end-to-end food chain of people, you know, and people, you know, in relationships is always the goal. And so I would say it's really a luxury to have such an amazing thing and be able to walk in. I mean, my first trip to LA, when we started talking about opening, all my chef friends here in LA, that, you know, that's the first place they took me, of course. That's where we meet. So
I bring my two chefs from New York, from Michael's in New York, out a couple times a year. And years ago, I would take them there in the beginning and they would just cry.
yes,
You know, yeah. As nice as the, you know, Union Square Market is they've about had it up to here with root vegetables.
Yes.
You know, and they get like 4 to 6 weeks. They're much more sophisticated, the farmers now there, and they much more do what they're supposed to do, which
right.
What should be grown in the area that they're farming. That was the big learning curve for a lot of people. And so now, but out here, I mean, it's just like,
are there farmers here shipping to New York for your restaurant? Because I know in the Bay Area, like Martin, he's, you know, Bay Area chefs would then move to New York and open things, and then he started a huge business just going, yes. They do everything a day later or whatever. But
yeah, we do a lot of that. It's in fact we started 15 years ago, maybe even 20, to get some of our local purveyors there.
Yeah.
To pick up here, like Baldor, you know what I'm saying? So our purveyors there already got the message that it was smart to do that because they're bringing in product. Yeah. And of course, we had to beat them into line because they tried to mark it all up too much. But
of course.
Yeah. And Chad, do you have any idea when you're going to be opening dinner service?
Oh, well, like all of you know, I'm sure it's kind of a matter of staffing right now.
Yeah.
So our chef and the team we have there now really want to open for dinner, and we had plans to open for dinner even before the second shutdown. It seems to be changing slightly. You know, a month, 2 months ago, it was impossible, and we were all just kind of like, whoa, this is crazy. But now people seem to be coming out a little more.
Yeah.
Wanting to work. And so, no, I'm really excited. I don't know. As soon as we have people, we'll definitely open. We want to open for sure. And we have some fun stuff planned.
We have a couple more questions. One is directed to Raphael. Can you comment on the Pico neighborhood home for your restaurants? Because that's really quite, I mean, that's the weird thing about LA. You just go a few blocks and it's already a little different feel.
Sure. So I was growing up in Santa Monica and Venice. I was more familiar with west of 4th Street and west of Lincoln. But I did go to junior high school just up the street. But the Pico neighborhood, you've got Gilbert's. There's a restaurant that I forgot to mention in the introduction of great restaurants, along with the ones that I mentioned, was obviously Valentino, and that was a very interesting place for maybe a bit of a risky place to open such an exciting restaurant. But I think Pico's been amazing. I mean, I wasn't sure. We had the Crab House that was there. We had 2424 Pico that was in that space. Then Josie opened up there. It was always, I think, it's always nice if you have the opportunity to open a restaurant where there was an existing restaurant that people knew of or that had some history. So having Josie there and having some of those other restaurants, I thought that'd be okay. But the support from the neighborhood and being a neighborhood restaurant, I've never seen, the support even prior to COVID that we were receiving from the community and the neighborhood, and then through COVID, it's been incredible. There's an interesting story about Gilbert's that I'll share another time, but we were going to open a.
You piqued our interest now.
Okay, we were going to open the restaurant. I was going to open that space with another well-known chef, and there was an idea of opening kind of a Mexican concept there. And I said, I don't know if I can do that. The Gilberts, that we've been family since childhood. So I said, we've got to go check. So I walked over to Gilbert's and I saw Ricardo and Chavella, and this is when their parents, when Gilbert was still alive. And I said, Ricardo, I've got to ask you a question. He said, what is it? I said, we want to open up over here, but it may be a little bit of a Mexican theme. Would that be okay with you? And he said, whoa, that's a tricky one. He goes, let me check with the family. So a week later, they get together and they go, we'd like to have a meeting with you. So I walk in and it's the entire family. I mean, there's probably 11, 12, with some grandchildren. And basically they just said, God bless you, Raphael. We support whatever you do, and we want you to open whatever you want to open there. And we support you, and we'll always support you. And that's kind of the base of the Pico neighborhood. And I just looked at him and I said, thank you so much. And I'm not going to do that concept. But it was really, it just goes to show you the kind of camaraderie and the kind of support and love that the neighborhood has, and the support that exists in that community. It's pretty special. It's pretty special.
Yeah, really wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little
ton of respect to go and get the blessing.
I wanted to get that blessing. I would always ask, and I went over there, and when they just offered the support in that mannerism that they did, with Gilbert, who's an attorney, and the entire family, and they just said, Ralph, you just do whatever you want to do, and we are there for you. And there's another piece of it that came later. I said, thank you. And I walked away from the space and came back to it, 6 months later, and fortunately was able to make it happen. And then the support even became greater from that family as we did that. So there is, the level of support in the Pico neighborhood and all the small businesses in that neighborhood are incredible. It really, it feels good to be there. As Chad said, we're honored to be here. We're honored to be in this neighborhood. We're honored to be here with each other, but really not hard to go to work and to go try to do our best job possible there.
What advice do the three of you have for new restaurant owners in Santa Monica? You can pretend that you're advising Chad.
Please do.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll take any advice right now.
Yeah,
I almost wanted to ask the panel the question about, as we said, a few minutes ago, we were speaking of it's just, there's a business coming back. Chad had spoken a little bit about, he feels like maybe there's a slight shift in the labor shortage that we've seen over the last months. And I kind of felt that way as well. And then just going into this weekend with some new fears, that's not what this panel is based on and we're going to talk about, but it's like, off the record or another time, it's like, how do we navigate and how do we make sure that we're keeping everybody good moving forward with some new, I think that's where it's really important that we do stay connected and communicate and try to find, some good reasoning from each other on how to move forward.
Yeah, I know that I heard last week that Walter and Marge's new place, Bicyclette, had to close down because they had 5 new cases in the staff. So
the health and safety issue, and that was one of the primary reasons we chose not to reopen last March for the takeout and delivery. It was so new, but it seemed bad, and having just flown back from New York that same week, what was going down there, the same thing. It just was. And we're still in it. I mean, people forget that when we were told in New York to shut down Friday the 13th, was our last day of service. They said, "Don't worry, you'll be back in business in 2 weeks by the 31st." And it just kept going and going and going and go, and it's going again.
Yep.
So I mean,
the virus has its own mind. So before we wrap this up, I would love it if each of you would tell us, if someone were to come to your place this week to order something, what would you want them to order? Chad, you go first.
Wow, I would say right now, Chef David at Santa Monica, he's doing a tartine, a toast with berries from the market and a whipped yogurt, tahina yogurt on toasted sesame whole wheat bread, which is all my favorite stuff kind of on a piece of toast. That one, he's also doing a citrus toast, a citrus tartine with JJ's lone daughter's stuff. So it's just, again, I mean, if you know how to put these things together, it's the farmers do most of the work. And so, I'm pretty proud of all the tartines that we have right now. It's like summertime. So it's kind of mind blowing, all the produce.
And does everybody walk out of the store with porridge bread?
If they listen to me, I mean, that's my favorite bread.
It's unbelievable, that bread.
It stays moist a long time.
Yeah, it has the moistest crumb. It's so creamy. What about you, Raphael? What should we order this week?
So every week we do a new taste menu, and sometimes we include a theme. I thought August or late July. This coming week, we're very excited to try to do. I'm doing a play on what old Santa Monica would maybe serve that was next to the Santa Monica Pier. It might be the Bellevue. It might be something that Shay J did or that Jay did. But we're doing a pier menu, like a play on classic kind of California 70s coastal cuisine. I don't know, coastal fare. I'm not sure if it's cuisine, maybe coastal fare, but we've got a really nice menu that we're planning out, and we're a little short staffed, so I'll be working tomorrow and Tuesday on our dark days in preparation for this week's taste menu. It'll be a really nice taste menu, so come say hello, and it's a little tribute to Santa Monica, old downtown Santa Monica.
And Michael, what about your place?
Well, we're not to be the cliche of seasonally driven, blah blah blah, but we're just kicking in big time. First of all, you got to have the oysters. We always have 3 or 5 different kinds of oysters from the West Coast and the East Coast, and they're spectacular. I mean, that's a whole story unto itself, how the growth of the oyster market has occurred over the last 40 years. But then I would immediately dive into Alex's melon. He has a fantastic sugar queen with serrano ham and mint and just olive oil, very clean. Maybe a little goat cheese. If it's back in the day, we would throw the Laura Chanel on there. Remember her?
Yes, I do.
And then Munak tomatoes with burrata cheese and a beautiful broadleaf that I get broadleaf arugula from Larry Thorne is phenomenal. And with a balsamic vinaigrette. And then we just started to get, although there's a horrible story in the LA Times today about the sockeye salmon.
Oh my God.
I know, it's like, it's too much.
Yeah, let's not talk about it, but everybody should read it.
But the sockeye that we're getting is spectacular, you know, and it's a rare salmon, rarer by the minute.
Yeah.
And I do that with a white corn, Valdivia white corn, succotash with favas and peas, and then chanterelles from Foods in Season. And that's a great little combo. That's one of my dishes that I've always done. And it works. Just, if you had those 4 things, you'd be in shape.
Wonderful. And so we had a question from Kathleen, what's the bread? So let me just say that we have a lot of incredible bread now in Los Angeles. And if you had told me a decade ago that the most carbohydrate averse clientele in the country would have embraced so much incredible bread, I would never have believed you. But Tartine stands on its own. Chad is really the king.
That's very generous. I would say I'm honored to join. I mean, the LA bread community is really spectacular, and people have been very welcoming, and it's humbling, and it just makes me want to, you know, do better work, do my best work, and just keep, as Raphael said, just taking care of everyone. I'm getting people from other bakers, and they work for me for a while, and that's already happening in LA, and it's great. I mean, I think we all just push each other to make better food and support, especially now.
So, because we talked about the porridge bread, describe what it is and what makes it so different, because Kathleen wants to know.
Yeah, the porridge bread is basically, it's like all of our bread. It's a long fermented sourdough. It's a very wet dough, but the main difference is just cooking either a rolled grain, like rolled oats, or flour, or a whole grain, cooking it in advance. So gelling the starch, letting it cool down, and then adding that in your dough. So you're basically adding more whole grain and lots more water that's bound up in the gelled starch. So then when you bake it, you have a crazy moist bread that's keeps for a longer time. It's a German technique, and also there's in different countries in Asia, this is a technique of scalding flour and adding it before people use modern sort of chemical preservatives to maintain the moisture. You can, if pizza's 60% hydration, baguettes are 65%, our regular bread is 85%, porridge ends up being like 120%. So it just makes a really moist bread, and you get more whole grain and you get that flavor. And there's a million ways to do it.
So I had breakfast today with the woman who was the chef at Angeli for 25 years, who is 4'11" and weighs less than 90 pounds. And she told me that she eats 2 loaves of porridge bread a week, slathered in butter. So I just wanted to let you know that you're doing a mitzvah.
Good.
One of my favorite people.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank the 3 of you so much for taking time in your Sunday evening to be with all of us, and for the generosity of the Conservancy to let us come together and have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Really an honor.
We'll see you soon.
All right, buddy.
Bye.
We'll see you at the market. I'll see you for dinner soon.
Bye.